Dan Bongino clashes with Jasmine Crockett. Her composed reply steals the spotlight. Imagine a conservative media powerhouse, famous for bulldozing opponents with unfiltered rage, suddenly facing a takedown so precise and unexpected that his whole empire wobbles. What happens when raw aggression crashes into unshakable calm? You're stepping into a showdown that didn't just make waves, it reshaped how we view political battles in our hyper-connected world. Hold tight, because this isn't your average spat. It's a raw display of power, poise, and the kind of twist that leaves everyone talking. Picture Dan Bongino, the ex-Secret Service agent turned podcast kingpin, ruling his domain with a style that's all fire and fury. His show pulls in millions, feeding off heated clashes where he interrupts, accuses, and dominates, turning interviews into high-stakes spectacles. From failed political bids to media stardom, he's built a brand on calling out what he sees as liberal chaos, with catchphrases that rally his base and terrify his critics. But on this day, he thought he had the perfect setup, a guest he could corner, expose, and claim victory over. Little did he know, the calm figure across from him was no easy mark. Now meet Jasmine Crockett, the Texas congresswoman who's risen through the ranks not by shouting, but by outsmarting. At 43, she's a former civil rights attorney who's stared down threats and systemic battles, emerging with a reputation for laser-sharp responses. Conservative circles painted her as a vulnerable progressive, but her quiet strength, honed in courtrooms facing real intimidation, hinted at something formidable. This wasn't random. It was a collision of worlds, one built on volume, the other on unyielding resolve. The build-up crackled with tension. Bongino's team prepped him like a boxer entering the ring, armed with gotcha lines to dismantle her on poly. C's like borders and economics. They expected fireworks on their terms. Crockett, arriving composed, had studied his playbook, ready for the storm. As cameras rolled, the studio, flanked by flags and power symbols, felt like a pressure cooker. What unfolded wasn't just debate, it was a revelation of how one person's poise could flip the script on aggression. Stay with us as we unpack this epic encounter, from the initial sparks to the viral aftermath that changed perceptions overnight. You won't believe how it all unravels. Let's step into the lion's den with Dan Bongino, a conservative media heavyweight who's carved out a reputation as one of the most aggressive voices in the game. A former Secret Service agent who once protected presidents like Obama, Bongino traded in his badge for a microphone, becoming a podcast titan with millions of listeners tuning in weekly. His show isn't just a platform, it's a battlefield, consistently ranking among the top political podcasts by capitalizing on conflict and controversy. After unsuccessful runs for Congress and Senate in Maryland, he channeled his frustration with the political establishment into a media empire that thrives on raw, unfiltered takedowns. His catchphrases like, "Liberalism is a mental disorder," have become rallying cries for a base hungry for someone to fight their corner against what he calls liberal corruption. Bongino's brand is built on being the loudest in the room, a champion for conservatives who feel sidelined by mainstream narratives. What makes Bongino notorious is his confrontational style, pure, unadulterated aggression. He doesn't debate. He dominates, using rapid-fire accusations and relentless interruptions to overwhelm guests. His approach is simple: hit hard, hit fast, and never let an opponent finish a thought. It's a tactic that's worked for years, turning unprepared politicians into viral clips of stumbles and defeats. His audience eats it up, driving engagement and ad revenue through the roof with every clash. But it's not just his voice that intimidates. It's the entire setup of his show, meticulously designed to overpower anyone who steps into his arena. Picture a studio draped in American flags, walls lined with framed photos of Bongino alongside Republican powerhouses, projecting an unshakable conservative ideology. The desk between him and his guest isn't just a prop. It's a psychological barrier, allowing him to lean in, invade personal space, and visually assert control. Every detail of the set screams dominance. The lighting casts harsh shadows, often making guests appear smaller or uneasy on camera. Seating arrangements and angles are calculated to elevate Bongino, positioning him as the authority while his opponents seem diminished. Even the production elements are weaponized. Camera operators are briefed to zoom in on flinches or hesitations, amplifying any sign of weakness for the audience at home. Behind the scenes, his team fuels the fire, crafting questions meant to trap and provoke, ensuring conflict for maximum viral potential. This isn't a space for dialogue, it's a fortress built to break down anyone who dares challenge his narrative. On the day of this historic interview, Bongino was primed for another easy victory, confident his intimidating setup and bulldozing style would crush yet another opponent. But was he walking into a trap he couldn't foresee? Stick around, because the stage is set for an unforgettable upset. Now shift your focus to the other side of the desk, Jasmine Crockett, the underestimated underdog who walked into Dan Bongino's arena looking like easy prey. At 43, this Texas congresswoman was pegged by his team as a fresh-faced progressive they'd dismantle for clicks, a black woman with just a couple of years in office, seemingly ripe for intimidation. Conservative circles had already labeled her a radical, dismissing her as out of her depth against a media veteran. But that's where they fumbled big time. Crockett isn't some novice. She's a force shaped by real-world grit, ready to turn the tables in ways no one saw coming. Hailing from a working-class Texas family, Crockett put herself through law school juggling multiple jobs, emerging as a powerhouse civil rights attorney. Before Congress, she was in the trenches as a public defender, representing clients crushed by a biased system, facing down aggressive prosecutors, death threats, and every dirty trick aimed at silencing her. Those courtroom battles taught her composure under fire, the kind that doesn't crack no matter how hostile the environment. She's handled cases on police brutality and discrimination that other lawyers shied away from, building a reputation for strategic thinking and unshakable calm. Elected in 2022, her congressional rise has been marked by viral moments in hearings, where her sharp, fact-driven interrogations leave opponents reeling. Yet, to Bongino's crew, she was just another Democrat to bully. Little did they know, her history screamed readiness for exactly this kind of fight. What sets Crockett apart is that quiet strength, a composure that's more weapon than weakness. She's faced far worse than a shouting host, personal attacks, systemic roadblocks, and high-stakes trials where one wrong move could cost everything. In Congress, she's known for maintaining dignity amid chaos, turning aggression into opportunities to expose flaws. Rumors even swirled in political circles about her preparation rituals, hours reviewing opponents' patterns, practicing responses to stay steps ahead. For this interview, whispers from her team suggest she arrived knowing the storm, armed with facts and a mindset honed from years of tough battles. It's that underdog edge, underestimated but unbreakable, that hinted she wasn't there to play defense. Could her legal savvy and poise crack Bongino's aggressive facade? As the mics heated up, the contrast was already brewing. One side all bluster, the other pure resolve. But how did the prelude set the trap? Hang on, because the buildup reveals just how mismatched this really was. The tension leading up to this explosive interview didn't ignite overnight. It built like a storm on the horizon, with both sides gearing up in wildly different ways. Dan Bongino's team saw Jasmine Crockett as the ideal target, a young, progressive congresswoman they could corner for maximum drama and downloads. Weeks before the mics went hot, producers huddled in strategy sessions, convinced this was an easy win. They viewed her as inexperienced, her voting record on issues like borders and spending ripe for gotcha questions designed to trip her up and paint her as out of touch. This one's going to be gold, insiders reportedly buzzed, briefing Bongino on every potential weak spot, old quotes twisted into sound bites, policy stances framed as extreme. They crafted a barrage of loaded queries. How do you justify policies hurting working families? Or, your border votes put lives at risk. How do you sleep? The goal was clear. Provoke defensiveness, generate viral clips of her stumbling, and let Bongino's aggression shine as the victor. Pacing backstage minutes before airtime, Bongino hyped himself like a fighter entering the ring, expecting to steamroll her and boost his conservative cred. His show thrived on such takedowns, and this seemed like textbook material for rallying his base against radical Democrats. Contrast that frenzy with Crockett's approach, quiet, methodical, and utterly prepared. Arriving at the studio 30 minutes early, she wasn't pacing or plotting attacks. She was reviewing notes, double-checking facts, and mentally mapping the confrontation. Her chief of staff had warned her this wouldn't be civil discourse, but Crockett insisted on showing up, armed with a message she refused to let bullying silence. Drawing from her days as a civil rights attorney, she'd spent hours studying Bongino's playbook, watching past episodes, noting his interruption patterns, trigger phrases, and moments when aggression backfired. She even ran mock sessions with her team, simulating escalating hostility to practice staying composed. "I've faced worse in courtrooms," she later reflected, hinting at the threats and intimidations from her legal battles that made a shouting host seem tame. While Bongino's crew expected her to wilt or explode, Crockett was there to model substance over spectacle, turning potential chaos into an opportunity. The production buzzed with anticipation, staff whispering about past guests who cracked under similar pressure. Yet Crockett's calm demeanor in the chair felt off-script, almost eerie to the crew. A lighting tech noted she seemed too relaxed for the ambush ahead. This prelude wasn't just logistics, it was a clash of mindsets. One side banking on intimidation for quick dominance, the other on poise for lasting impact. The studio, with its flags and power props, felt primed for Bongino's theater. But as the cameras rolled, was an unexpected reversal brewing? Hold on, because the initial sparks are about to fly. The interview kicked off with a veneer of civility, but the undercurrent of tension was impossible to miss. Dan Bongino leaned into his microphone, voice already laced with that signature edge his fans loved. "Congresswoman, your party keeps talking about helping working families, but your policies are destroying the middle class," he fired, setting a trap right from the start. It was a loaded opener designed to put Jasmine Crockett on the defensive, forcing her to justify broad Democratic stances under his scrutiny. The studio lights bore down, amplifying the pressure cooker atmosphere as cameras captured every nuance. Crockett, seated across the imposing desk, responded with measured poise, citing specific data from her Texas district. Job growth stats and policy impacts that directly countered his claim. But Bongino wasn't there for details. He cut her off mid-sentence, volume ticking up. "That's not what I asked you. Are you going to answer or just recite talking points?" Interruption 1, a classic move to paint her as evasive, his tone accusatory, eyes narrowing like a prosecutor cornering a witness. The aggression was escalating subtly, his body language shifting forward, invading the space even from behind the barrier. Crockett's jaw tightened ever so slightly, a flicker of the pressure building, yet she held her ground, voice steady. "I did answer, Mr. Bongino, with concrete examples. If you'd like more detail on how these policies have helped families in my district, I'm ready." He pressed harder, dismissing her. "Facts," with a wave. "Don't give me that lawyer double talk. My audience sees through spin like yours." Accusation layered on, his frustration bubbling as her calm refused to crack. The room felt smaller, producers behind the scenes nodding approvingly at the rising conflict, perfect for clips. Crockett, under the mounting barrage, took a subtle breath, her legal training kicking in to maintain composure, but the strain showed in her focused gaze. She pushed back with more facts. "These aren't talking points. They're real outcomes from legislation I've supported, like infrastructure investments creating jobs." Shifting to immigration, Bongino saw his opening for a sharper jab. "Let's talk about the border crisis your party created. You represent Texas but vote like someone ignoring the chaos. How do you sleep knowing your policies put American lives at risk?" His voice rose, accusations flying like arrows, each one personal and pointed to provoke a slip. Crockett, feeling the heat, leaned in slightly, her posture firm but the pressure evident in her precise wording. "I've been to the border, spoken with agents from both sides. Real solutions address root causes like violence abroad, not just walls. I've worked bipartisan on reforms for humane security." Facts as her shield, she held steady, refusing to escalate, even as his interruptions piled on. "That's evasion. Answer the question." The early clash was a masterclass in Bongino's style, escalating from questions to outright attacks, each cut in building chaos. Crockett remained calm on the surface, but the relentless pressure tested her, her responses factual anchors in the storm. Yet as his volume climbed, something in her eyes hinted at a turning point brewing. Would his nuclear moment shatter everything? Brace yourself, the breaking point is seconds away. The frustration that had been simmering in Dan Bongino finally boiled over, transforming the interview from tense sparring into outright chaos. As Jasmine Crockett's factual responses continued to deflect his attacks without a hint of wavering, Bongino snapped. He bolted from his chair, the sound of it scraping against the floor echoing like a starting gun. Leaning aggressively over the desk, he invaded her personal space, face flushed crimson, finger jabbing accusatorily as his voice escalated to a full-throated roar. "You think you can come into my house on my show and lie to my audience?" he bellowed, volume spiking to levels that strained the studio's audio equipment. "You think because you're some hotshot lawyer from Texas, you can outsmart me? I've been doing this longer than you've been in politics." Spittle flew with his words, his wild gestures turning the set into a spectacle of unbridled fury. It was intimidation pure and simple, a physical and verbal onslaught meant to break her spirit, make her shrink or snap back in kind. Cameras swiveled to capture the stark visuals, Bongino towering, red-faced and unhinged, while Crockett remained seated, her expression unchanging. Producers in the control room held their breath, torn between the goldmine of viral drama and the dawning realization that their host looked more like a bully losing control than a triumphant warrior. The outburst hung in the air, thick and electric, as Bongino paused to catch his breath, expecting her to crumble under the weight of his rage, but Crockett didn't flinch. She sat with impeccable posture, hands folded calmly in her lap, maintaining steady eye contact as if dealing with a routine courtroom disruption. Her face betrayed no fear, no anger, just a professional attentiveness that made his explosion seem all the more erratic. It was a masterstroke of nonverbal defiance, her stillness is amplifying the absurdity of his theatrics. When the shouting subsided into heavy breathing, she spoke, her voice a serene contrast, cutting through the tension like a steady breeze. "Mr. Bongino, I can see you're very passionate about your beliefs, and I respect that," she said evenly, acknowledging him without validating the tantrum. "But I think your audience deserves better than watching you yell at a guest who came here in good faith to have a conversation." The words were simple, delivered with the precision of a seasoned attorney, but they landed like a counterpunch, exposing his aggression as the real disruption, not her facts. In that instant, the power dynamic flipped irrevocably. Bongino, still standing awkwardly, mouth slightly agape, looked diminished, his bluster revealed as hollow against her unshakable calm. What was meant to intimidate had backfired, making him appear the one out of control, while Crockett emerged as the composed authority. The studio fell into a stunned hush, the air conditioning's hum suddenly noticeable as everyone processed the reversal. Her response didn't just neutralize the outburst, it reframed the entire exchange, appealing directly to his listener's sense of fairness and turning his tactics against him. Bongino slowly sank back into his seat, his earlier swagger evaporated, reduced to a weak mumble. But Crockett wasn't finished. Her calm had opened the door for a deeper dismantling. How would she press this advantage? Keep watching, because the real takedown is just unfolding. With the power firmly shifted, Jasmine Crockett didn't hesitate. She delivered a counter so precise and composed it dismantled Dan Bongino's entire approach in seconds. Still seated, her voice steady as ever, she looked him square in the eye and said, "I understand that conflict and controversy are your business model, and it's clearly been successful for you. But I'm not here to be a prop in your performance. I'm here to discuss real issues affecting real people in my district and across this country." It was a cutting remark, exposing his shouting as nothing more than theatrical fuel for views and revenue, not genuine debate. By framing it that way, she appealed straight to his audience, implying they deserve substance over spectacle, planting seeds of doubt about whether his rants truly served them or just lined his pockets. Bongino, now slumped back in his chair, could only muster a feeble defense. "I'm not yelling, I'm just passionate about defending my audience from politicians who don't tell the truth." But Crockett wasn't letting that slide. With a calm that made his earlier explosion look even more unhinged, she replied, "Mr. Bongino, I've been telling the truth this entire time, providing facts, data, and specific examples. What I haven't done is yell, point fingers, or question your character. The contrast speaks for itself." Her words were surgical, head-on addressing his tactics by highlighting how his bullying had failed spectacularly. Instead of intimidating her, it had spotlighted his loss of control, making him appear petty and ineffective. She turned the mirror on him, showing viewers that real strength comes from composure, not chaos, and subtly invited them to question if this was the discourse they tuned in for. Pressing her advantage, Crockett circled back to policy with effortless grace. "If you'd like an adult conversation about differences, on boards. DERS, economy, or anything else. I'm ready. But if you just want to yell and point fingers, you can do that without me. This wasn't just a shutdown, it was an olive branch wrapped in steel, appealing to any fair-minded listener in Bongino's base who might crave actual dialogue over drama. By exposing his strategy as a hollow bid for attention, she painted him as the real obstacle to meaningful talk, her poise underscoring that bullying crumbles against preparation and facts. The studio hung in stunned silence, Bongino's red face and weak mumbles a visual testament to her mastery. What was supposed to be his dominant takedown had become her platform, flipping the narrative and leaving him exposed. Crockett's remarks resonated because they weren't emotional barbs. They were composed truths that cut deep, forcing even his supporters to reflect. She hadn't raised her voice once, yet she'd commanded the room, proving that calm can conquer aggression. The internet was about to erupt with this reversal, but how far would the shockwaves travel? Stay tuned, because the viral fallout is where things get truly wild. Moments after the interview wrapped, the digital world ignited like a powder keg, turning a studio clash into a nationwide phenomenon. Clips of Dan Bongino's outburst, his red-faced shouting contrasted against Jasmine Crockett's serene composure, flooded social media at breakneck speed. Within the first hour, Crockett Stays Calm skyrocketed to a national trend on Twitter, amassing thousands of mentions as users dissected every frame. The key compilation video, splicing Bongino's aggressive interruptions with Crockett's unflappable responses, racked up over 50,000 shares in just 2 hours, spreading like wildfire across platforms. TikTok users remixed it with dramatic soundtracks, pushing views into the millions, while Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts amplified the split-screen drama, where one side embodied chaos and the other unyielding grace. Facebook groups and Reddit threads buzzed with breakdowns, the original segment from Bongino's channel itself garnering massive traffic, though not the kind he wanted, as comment sections turned against him. Reactions poured in from every corner of the political spectrum, creating a rare bipartisan echo. Progressive voices erupted in celebration, hailing Crockett as a beacon of resistance. Tweets from Democratic influencers praised her as the blueprint for handling bullies, with viral posts like, "Finally, a politician who wins with facts, not fury," gaining hundreds of thousands of likes. Fundraising spiked dramatically, her campaign reporting donations from all 50 states, many donors citing the moment as their catalyst. But the real surprise came from unexpected quarters, conservatives who typically rallied behind Bongino's style. Even his own audience voiced disappointment, with comments on his pages reading, "I've listened to Dan for years, but that was hard to watch. She answered everything, and he just yelled." A prominent conservative influencer with a massive following admitted, "I disagree with Crockett's politics, but she handled that like a pro." Dan looked unhinged. Moderate Republicans echoed this, one strategist tweeting, "This is why people hate politics. She came in good faith," and he screamed like a child, "We need better." The fallout wasn't confined to online chatter. It rippled into mainstream media. CNN and MSNBC scrambled for follow-up. Yes, communication experts labeling it a masterclass in de-escalation. Late-night shows like SNL prepped skits mocking Bongino's meltdown, further fueling the virality. Polling in the aftermath showed swing voters favoring Crockett's approach, with large majorities across parties preferring composure over confrontation. For Bongino, the backlash was a gut punch. His subscriber comments filled with calls for accountability, some longtime fans unsubscribing amid the embarrassment. What started as his intended takedown became a cultural flashpoint, exposing aggressive tactics as outdated in an era craving authenticity. This online explosion didn't just trend, it reshaped narratives overnight, proving one calm response could outshine any rant. But what broader ripples did it send through political media? Hang on, because the lasting impact reveals even more. The viral storm from this confrontation didn't fade with the trends. It carved deep grooves into the fabric of political discourse, sparking conversations that went far beyond one heated exchange. What started as a studio meltdown evolved into a broader reckoning, challenging the very nature of how we debate in America. Analysts and professors alike began dissecting it as a pivotal moment, with places like Georgetown University incorporating the clip into curricula on media and politics. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a public policy expert there, called it a turning point. Arguing it exposed the exhaustion with toxic rhetoric that's poisoned everything from cable news to social feeds. In an era where shouting matches often drown out substance, Crockett's approach, rooted in facts and dignity, highlighted a growing appetite for civil, effective communication. Polls in the weeks after showed majorities across parties favoring composure over chaos, suggesting voters are weary of theatrics that prioritize viral outrage over real solutions. This wasn't just a win for one side, it signaled a potential shift where substance could finally edge out spectacle in shaping public opinion. At the center of this ripple effect was Jasmine Crockett's meteoric rise as a national figure, transforming her from a Texas congresswoman into a symbol of resilient leadership. Invitations flooded in, from major news outlets like CNN for in-depth segments to profiles in outlets highlighting her as a Democratic rising star. Her fundraising exploded, with small-dollar donations surging from all 50 states, donors often noting how her handling of the bullying inspired them. Party strategists, including those in the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, featured her in national ads, using her poise as a contrast to aggressive Republican rhetoric. Young voters and women in particular rallied around her, seeing a model for strength without stooping to lows. Even whispers of higher ambitions circulated, positioning her as a fresh voice in a party seeking energizers. Crockett's calm under fire didn't just elevate her, it inspired a wave of activists and politicians to emulate her, proving that grace can build broader coalitions than fury ever could. Meanwhile, aggressive media styles faced intense scrutiny, with Bongino's outburst becoming Exhibit A in critiques of confrontational hosting. Cable executives held emergency meetings, questioning if scream fests were sustainable when they risk backfiring into PR nightmares. Focus groups revealed viewers turning away from hosts who cross into bullying, preferring authenticity that fosters real dialogue. Late-night comedy amplified this, with SNL sketches mocking the meltdown, further eroding the appeal of such tactics. For figures like Bongino, it was a wake-up call. His brand, built on owning opponents, now faced backlash even from his base, who craved policy depth over drama. It hinted at a larger evolution, away from theatrics that divide, towards substance that informs. This moment whispers of change. Could we be tipping to "O-word," a discourse where calm conviction trumps chaotic outbursts? As we wrap this tale, reflect on what it means for the voices shaping our future. So, as we pull back from this unforgettable clash, let's linger on what it truly means. In one electric moment, Jasmine Crockett's unbreakable composure didn't just weather Dan Bongino's storm, it redefined political communication entirely. What was meant to be a demolition became a blueprint, proof that steady facts and grace can shatter aggressive bluster, turning a bully's roar into an echo of irrelevance. Careers shifted in seconds. Crockett soared as a beacon of dignified strength, while Bongino's tactics faced a mirror they couldn't ignore. It's a reminder that in our noise-drenched world, one act of poise can cut through the chaos, inspiring a hunger for substance over spectacle and challenging the old guard to evolve or fade. Now pause and ponder. Who really shapes the narratives in today's fractured landscape? Is it the loudest voices, crafting conflict for clicks, or those like Crockett, wielding calm as a weapon to reclaim the conversation? In an age of viral spins and echo chambers, this showdown urges us to question the gatekeepers and demand better. What hit you hardest about this epic reversal? The raw outburst, the masterful flip, or the ripple effects? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, share where you're watching from, and let's keep the dialogue going. If this breakdown got your pulse racing, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into political firestorms. Who knows what clash we'll unpack next? Stay sharp, stay engaged, and remember, true power often whispers,